Imagine sitting down with your family and flipping on the TV just in time to see the nightly newscast and Anonymous, the global hacking organization, the guys with the white Guy Fawkes masks. They say they're going to target and destroy you. Well, it happened to me, and even though it was not my company or even anything I had to do to get their attention, I did run all the IT for the company that did. They were one of my clients at the time. And to explain to you what happened, I have to take you back a few years before it happened to give you some context. So going back to 2005, I left a well-paying job managing an in-house data center to set out on my own, and I created a consulting company helping companies take advantage of the new emerging technology to streamline their businesses. One customer came along that at first seemed like a dream, but they quickly turned into being a nightmare. While talking to the CFO there, I couldn't help but notice that her Outlook send and receive progress bar was taking forever. When we timed it, it took over 20 minutes, no exaggeration, just to run from start to finish. And at that moment, I saw dial-up connections that were even faster. When asking how much they paid for the service, the numbers were just ridiculous. Something was definitely wrong. They were paying for a direct high-speed line that was supposedly dedicated to just their email. At the time, these things were called T1 lines, and they cost over $700 a month, and depending on where you were at. They typically connected an entire room of servers to the internet, not just one small server. So when I reached out to the IT company that was managing everything for them at the time, they immediately clammed up and just said that the server was in a secure data location and only their staff was authorized to have access to it. They blamed the slow service on it being a very old server, and they were just telling this client to upgrade to a new server, which they quoted at around $12,000. Something just didn't smell right, and I asked the client to get access to the T1 line provider so I could supposedly find this secure data center was. Well, because the client was paying for the internet connection, we were able to get the installation address. And this was way before Google Maps, so I had to drive to the address. And I was just plain shocked when I pulled into the parking lot of an Orlando golf course. The installation address was for the country club there. Unsure that this was the right place, I was able to hunt down a general manager there, and after showing him some paperwork, he revealed to me that he too was being charged by the same IT company for maintaining the building's internet. The IT company was basically billing the country club for the connection that my new client was paying for. The country club manager helped me search through the humid building to locate a dark and dingy closet just outside the kitchen, where under the clutter and the dust, I saw the dim blinking lights of my client's email server stuffed in the corner and covered with boxes. Well, I wish I could say that this was the worst of it, but this only begins the battle. We were able to move all of their email from the server to one of the best hosting providers at the time, and they were still saving lots of money. But within days, the client's email was just calling me because they were buried in junk mail again. When I compared to what was migrated from the new server from the old server to the new server, I realized that the previous server was just full of viruses, and hackers were sending junk mail out like crazy as the client. But no matter how many times I cleaned the server, the employees' computers, changed passwords, and installed antivirus, nothing could keep these hackers from off the server for more than a few days. I was just not happy with the lack of support that I was getting from the hosting provider at the time, and they kept on promising me over and over again it was fixed. I started to move to other hosting providers, and in 3 years I migrated that company to 4 of the top hosting providers available. All at the same time, the hackers just showed up back within days. I never expected this job to eat so much of my time, and I was even thinking about the situation was just plain hopeless for these guys. And feeling defeated, I just went back to my roots. And when I was in those days, I managed a small data center. I remembered how we used to rent out space to companies that would just run their own equipment from that server, from that server room. And I wondered if something still was available like that. And it definitely was not cheap, but I found a gold standard data center located in the central US, and they provided me with the dedicated server that I wanted, just the way I wanted it. And finally, when it was my server and my rules, the hackers and junk mail were finally gone. And it dawned on me what the issue was all along. Hosting companies typically sell shared space to anybody with a credit card. It was all about how many customers they could stuff on a server. Security is an absolute afterthought in their sales model. But just when I finally thought I was out of the woods, we come full circle to the Anonymous announcing that they were going to now target and destroy my servers because my client gained international exposure from mistreating an employee. I must have drank 3 bottles of Pepto-Bismol that week. Nasty emails started coming down, and all followed by what's called the ping of death, which took down access to my server's client website. But amazingly, as hard as the hackers had tried to get into that website and steal my client's critical information, like client names, addresses, emails, even credit card info, they couldn't get in. They did stop people from reaching the website by filling up the bandwidth to the website, but it didn't affect any of my other clients. And after 4 days of trying, they gave up and moved on. When the dust finally settled, I was pretty amazed by what we did. If we stayed with the previous hosting companies, I probably wouldn't be telling you this story because we would have been sued out of existence by hundreds of pissed off users and probably even the company that we were held responsible to take care of these things for. During the attack, we learned more than anyone else could because we lived through it. It was like having combat experience in cyber warfare. We took what we learned and improved our systems and processes even more. The biggest thing we learned was during the attack was hundreds of thousands, if not possibly millions of websites orchestrated that attacked against us that week. And I can guarantee you none of their IT people were the wiser. Think of it like this. Across the US now, there are hundreds of millions of computers and servers running at business offices and at homes connected to the internet. What if, out of those, say, 100 million computers, say only 1% of them were infected with a virus that allowed a computer or a hacker to simply check a website address? Well, that's 1 million computers. Now just think that if 1 million computers were all timed to check that website at the exact same moment, well, that's how hackers scale these types of attacks against us. The problem is only growing as more and more faster devices come online and even faster internet connections. So just think of a tidal wave of being made up of 1 billion buckets of water, and you kind of get the idea of what's going on out there.